So just before we start getting actually involved in what we need to start painting, I'll just show you a couple of my paintings just so you can see that I can actually paint. I've got a little selection here that I've done recently. I like to sketch. My style's generally loose. That's just a guy playing the accordion. So yeah, we do people as well. This is one of my demonstrations exercises from my other website that we did for students there. Boats. We do lots of the seaside. I live in the UK, and I just love the coastline. Let's just that one, just of a place in Cornwall. You know, you'll be painting pictures like this. This is the sort of thing that we'll be going on to. Very simplified versions, but it'll be paintings like this. So, you know, boats, landscapes, people, still life, whatever. And there's just a lady playing the flute. And these are just sketches that we did for an exercise recently. But that gives you, and then also there's also a link on my website which shows you a gallery of my paintings. I'm not selling stuff on the website, it's just solely there for you to have an idea of what I do. But I hope you might find that interesting. It's interesting to see, you know, what the person that's trying to teach you can do. So I think now we need to move on and just have a look at what equipment we need in watercolour, and if you want to make a start, this will give you some idea what you need to go out and buy. It will be some text to accompany this, so you've got a list of the things you'd need to get started. Okay, now I've changed my camera angle so you can see what I'm talking about a bit easier. I think what we'll do is we'll look at paints first, and what I use is a palette like this. Okay, and this is a plastic palette. I prefer to work in plastic. People say, well, oh, plastic stains. Well, it does, but that can easily be cleaned up, and I've never had an issue with plastic staining being a problem when I paint. Not a problem. Good thing about this, the metal ones, I find the hinges tend to rust, and I've had all sorts of problems with metal palettes. But this is called the Ley-Greaves palette, and in the UK they're about £15. And it's, in fact, I've got two of these and they're absolutely brilliant. They've got, what you're looking for is nice deep mixing wells, so you can get plenty of paint, because again, as you'll find out as you start painting, having plenty of water and paint is really important. So the Ley-Greaves palette, I recommend that. Yeah, I really recommend it. I've got quite a selection of paints in here. To start off with, you need nothing more than a red, blue and a yellow, which will go into one of our first lessons. We'll be dealing with primary colours, so you can get away with 3 colours really. You can get away with a cadmium red, a cobalt blue, say, and a lemon yellow. You know, you don't need all the others. Obviously you'll build those up as time goes on, but initially you just really do need the 3 colours. But if you want to spend more, it's great, you can get them. The other thing is, this palette obviously doesn't take what they call pans, which are like little, I haven't got any here to show you, but they're little blocks of paint that fit in there. Now these gaps in here are too small to take a pan, but what I do is I bought this palette solely for the purpose, which is much more economical, because watercolour paint's not cheap. And what I do is I've got tubes here, Winsor and Newton tubes, and I use those to squeeze directly into there, and I find it a much more cost-effective way of painting. Using the little pans, it's okay to start off with the little pans if you've got a palette that takes those, and then when they run out, don't buy another pan to replace it. Buy the equivalent colour in a tube and just top it up. That's a much better way to paint, and it will save you a lot of money in the future. So you want tubes, and you want a plastic palette ideally. If you've got a metal one now, that's fine, and then when that one gives up the ghost, you can then move on to a metal one, a plastic one, sorry, if you want to. And then you want to top up with tubes. Right, what's next? I also have this little palette here, which I keep beside me when I'm in the studio. And this is just when this one, sometimes when you're in the throes of painting, this will get full up of paint, especially when you're working on a bigger painting. And you just want some clean space to mix some fresh colours, and that's really handy. Then what you can do is this one starts filling up, you can just keep this one clean all the time. Much easier than trying to clean this one, which you've got to kind of get out, and it's much more difficult to get the paint out. But this one's great for kind of instant work. So you're giving yourself a good chance of success by having a nice lot of paint, you know, nice rich colours, in the sense of that you can top up with tubes. Okay, like I said, you can just have the 3 primaries, but you don't want to skimp on paint. You don't want to be scrubbing away on a little bit of dry paint in the bottom and trying to paint a painting, because it won't happen. So you need to have the, you know, a decent amount of paint available to you to paint with. A nice clean palette to just add some, to mix some fresh colours when you need. And then you should be pretty sorted. Now you can ask any questions you like below the video regarding that, and I'll do my best to answer. Let's move on to brushes. Now again, I've got hundreds of brushes, but then I've collected those over years of painting. But what would I need? I hear you saying, what would I need to start painting? Well, you know, you could probably get away with just that, to be honest, and you can paint a picture. It's not a problem. So if you just got the one brush, and that's all you can afford, because I appreciate for a lot of people money's tight, and it's, you know, that's all they can afford. But just get a good one. You can buy synthetic, but you get a Pro Art or something like that. Go to your local art store, and they'll give you a good brush. You know, for what you're looking for is a brush that will hold plenty of water, like this one will. But also, when I flick it down, you get a nice point on it. You see? You see that? You get quite a nice point. So you can do, if you've only got the one brush, you can do the detail work with a point, but you can also lay quite a bit of paint down with the brush, like that. Now, if you can run some more, great. And ideally, the next one, if I could only have 2 brushes, what would I have? Right, I would probably have that round that I showed you to start with. And then I'd have a flat brush, this one, okay, which is about a 3/4 inch flat. Yeah. And for this one, it's great because you could do flat, obviously flat areas, but you could do roofs on buildings, things like that. You could use it on its edge to draw lines. You could draw tree trunks with it up and down. It's beautiful. Twigs on branches. It's a very versatile brush. And it's really worth getting to know and use your brushes without having hundreds of brushes that you never use. There's no point. Just have a few and get to know them well, and see what they can do, because you'll be surprised how much a couple of brushes can do. If I was only going to have 3 brushes, well, this is my little Isobay brush, and I love it. It's I'm not sure what's the size of it's. Oh no, hang on, what's that? I think it says a 0. It's a size 0. But that can't be true, because that's a 0. Unfortunately, what happens is the actual, what size they are. I think this is a number 6 actually. Looking at that, it looks like a 6 in Isobay terms. But anyway, this brush is very similar to this one. There's not a lot of difference, other than the Isobay one probably points up slightly better than this one, but I would still be happy to use that. So those 3, and then what else would I have? I would have this one is a very useful brush, and I recommend to everybody to get one. They're cheap as well. It's like a Chinese painting brush, and I'm assuming that's bamboo. It's made on a piece of bamboo, and it's made of goat hair, and as you can see, that points up really well. Now it's no good for doing washes, because the hair in it is not it's not very fine. Goat hair's thicker, so you can't hold the moisture in this brush that you can in this one. But what you can do with this is you can get nice dry brush effects, which you'll be learning later. You can draw nice trees, nice twigs, nice branches. You can draw windows, window panes, all sorts of things. It's endless. I did a portrait the other day, quite a big one, and I did everything with the one brush. It was fantastic. So I really recommend that. And then finally, if you get a rigger, and I think that's a size 0, and that's really useful for doing twigs and things like that. So basically that is, you know, those 5 brushes and you're sorted. But if you can only afford 2, you can still do everything I'm going to teach you with the 2. So get that one first. But again, I'll put this on the below the video so you can see what we've been talking about. Okay. Right, what next? Okay, paper. Now paper is a very crucial thing to bear in mind, because obviously again watercolour paper can be quite expensive. I use a brand called Arsh watercolour paper, which is quite expensive, I suppose, and I wouldn't recommend you use that for starting out. But again, it's something, you know, depending on where you come from in the world, the brands will be different. I think Canson make a nice paper, and they're a lot cheaper than this one. So best thing is to go to your local art shop where you're going to get your supplies from, and they will give you the, you know, they'll tell you what is a good starting paper which is going to paint well. Because if you buy the cheapest paper, your results are going to be limited by the quality of the paper. Now, and that is just a fact. I will argue that all day long. You know, because you've got to get, because watercolour painting can be quite challenged to start with, and you've got to give yourself the best chance, and having a reasonable quality paper is going to give you that best chance. So go to your local art shop, okay, and like I say, you've got yourself a sheet of paper like that, and what I tend to do is just clip it onto the onto my board with a couple of clips, well, with 4. 2, 4. So there we go. Now, if this paper, if you get it really wet, will cockle a little bit. So you want to get something around about 140 pounds. So when you get the water on the paper, it doesn't ripple too much. Now, I'm not going to go into this too much now, but I will show you later on. There are ways of taping paper down. So what happens, it stretches out, and when you paint on it, it doesn't move at all. You don't get any sort of waving or rippling. Now, you know, that's slightly more advanced. We'll go into that at a later date, but at the moment, for the sort of work we're going to be doing, just clipping your paper to a board, a little bit of MDF board will be fine, or taping it down with masking tape, whatever you want to do. But eventually, as you start experimenting more and using more water maybe, and getting your paintings, you know, doing much more advanced paintings, you want to start thinking about stretching. But we'll move into that later on, and you know, sort that problem out when it arises. You want something like a 2B pencil, 2 or 3B pencil. Just sketch lightly with it. Excuse me, and that will really be enough for you. Now, if you're some people that paint, and I need it sometimes, I'm a little bit wobbly with my hands, so especially the older people, if when you're painting and you're doing maybe some very fine detail like trees and stuff like that, instead of getting all sort of like all over the place, sometimes it's handy to have a little stick that you can put over your board and just use that to rest your hand on over the painting, because it means you don't keep putting your hand all over there and it's sort of all over the work, and you get grease off your hand and it transfers itself to the paper. It's not good. So just a little stick. This is just an old stair rod I use, but anything would do. I've used wooden spoons, ladles, all sorts of things in the past if I've been out painting or I've been demonstrating somewhere and forgotten this. But anyway, so use that, and it will you know, support your hand a bit if you need it. I don't use it all the time, but sometimes if I'm doing very fine work, I use that. One thing I forgot to mention about the paints was a good starter set that you could be looking for. These are artist quality, so they're a bit more expensive. It would be called Cotman, and they're the Cotman student range, and they're very good quality. I've used those on art lessons and stuff in the past, and they have a good quality rich pigment. They come in tubes, and they're very, very economical to buy, and you know, and because they've got good strength and pigment, they're economical to use. You don't have to use a lot of it. It works well. So that's about it really. That is sort of like an introduction to watercolour painting. You've seen a bit of my work, and you've also seen what we need to get started in painting. It's not a lot really. A few brushes, some paint, palette, a bit of board, and some paper clips, and that's it. Okay, so just ask any questions that you might need answers to below the video, and I'll get back to you and answer them as best as I can. But that should give you a little bit to go on, and we'll be looking at doing some painting next time on the next video. Simple washes. Okay, so thanks for watching, and I look forward to chatting to you all again soon. Bye for now.